They didn't doubt you, they laughed at you. They didn't fear you, they didn't hate you, they didn't even bother to oppose you. They laughed. And in this world, laughter cuts deeper than knives. Mockery is execution without blood. Sarcasm is poison disguised as a smile. You felt their eyes slice you like blades. Every chuckle was a funeral bell for the weak version of you. Every time they smirked, something inside you died, and something darker woke up. They whispered behind screens. They joked in private chats. They smiled in your face, then tore your name apart the moment you walked away. You weren't underestimated. You were dismissed, forgotten before you could even exist. You were the punchline, the empty chair, the forgotten name. You know what it feels like to be invisible while still being mocked, to speak and be met with silence, to try and be treated like a joke. They didn't break you with punches. They broke you with absence, with silence, with contempt. And that pain, it didn't fade. It fermented. It matured. It hardened into steel behind your ribs. Betrayal didn't cut once. It carved you daily. Family doubted you. Friends vanished. Strangers found entertainment in your struggle. They called you unnecessary, unworthy, insignificant, a footnote in their world. Your ambition was cute. Your dreams were delusion. Your effort was funny. Fake smiles, empty nods, silent judgment louder than thunder. And you learned something brutal, something priceless. You learned silence, not as surrender, but as a weapon. You stopped speaking because words were wasted on the blind. You stopped explaining because fools don't deserve clarity. You stopped seeking validation because the throne you're building was never built for spectators. Your hunger stopped being loud. Your rage stopped shaking. Your pain stopped pleading. It sharpened. It focused. It sank its teeth into your bones and refused to let go. You don't break when mocked. You evolve. You don't collapse when forgotten. You ferment in darkness until the world can no longer ignore the thunder brewing in your veins. Remember the nights when you couldn't sleep, not because you were weak, but because your dreams screamed louder than the world's doubt. Every humiliation became a brick in your unseen throne. Every insult became mortar. Every smirk a nail in the coffin of the version of you that needed approval. You didn't rise with applause. You rose with silence, with grit, with scars that don't show but never fade. People think strength is loud, but true strength is born in quiet wounds, in swallowed words, in lonely nights, in dreams too heavy to carry, yet too sacred to drop. They laughed because they thought your story was over. They didn't realize you were just in the chapter before the rise. A king is not crowned when he succeeds. He is crowned when he stops begging for permission to exist, and you stopped that long ago. So let them talk. Let them whisper your name like you were a mistake. Let them doubt, mock, ridicule, and smirk. Because one day, their laughter will echo back as regret, and their silence will be the loudest apology the universe ever forces from their throats. This world has a cruel humor. It laughs before it kneels. It mocks before it bows. It ridicules before it fears. Let them laugh. Graves are quiet before kings rise. Pain didn't break you. It instructed you. Pain taught you more than comfort ever could. Comfort shelters, pain shapes. Comfort whispers, pain roars. Comfort puts you to sleep. Pain forces you to awaken. People fear pain because they think it destroys. But destruction is only a doorway the weak refuse to cross. You crossed it, alone, with a trembling hands and a furious heart. You learned early that life doesn't hand crowns. It hands scars. And those who bleed with purpose earn thrones forged in iron. The nights were cold, not because of the air, but because truth cut deeper. You didn't shiver from temperature. You shivered from realization, from awakening, from knowing the world wasn't cruel by mistake. It was cruel by design. Every night carried the weight of a blade resting on your thoughts. Yet you didn't fear the blade. You feared becoming nothing. So you sharpened instead of shattered. You chose thunder over tears, direction over collapse, war over surrender. Rage became discipline. Silence became studies. Wounds became wisdom. You didn't heal. You reforged. You stopped bleeding. You started sharpening. Every heartbreak didn't dull you. It upgraded you. Every betrayal didn't break you. It reprogrammed you. Every failure didn't defeat you. It redesigned you. When the weak fell to sadness, you fed on it like fuel. When others begged for a hand, you learned to rebuild with broken fingers. When the world turned its back, you faced the storm alone. And the storm blinked first. You learned to breathe in chaos. You learned to stand in silence so loud it could crush weaker minds. You learned that the world listens only to those who rise loud enough to shake its arrogance. Loneliness didn't drown you. It crowned you. Isolation didn't weaken you. It stripped distractions. Silence didn't cage you. It unlocked the voice inside you the world tried to suffocate. Like forgotten warriors in history, Spartans in exile, kings in shadows. You disappeared so your hunger could grow teeth. You vanished so your future entrance would shake bones. Look at history. The greatest forces weren't born under applause. They were forged in exile. Caesar walked alone before he commanded legions. Miyamoto Musashi trained alone before he created legend. Every empire began as a lonely man staring into the dark, believing he deserved more than dust. You believed the same, not because someone told you, but because pain pushed you into a corner and whispered, "Rise or rot." You didn't choose strength. Strength chose you because weakness disgusted you. You didn't chase greatness. Greatness stalked you through misery and dragged you by your scars. Loneliness turned into armor. Quiet turned into strategy. You studied while they slept. You planned while they played. You choked on silence until silence learned your name. You didn't need validation. You needed revenge disguised as discipline. While they partied, you plotted. While they laughed, you leveled up. While they waited for miracles, you built machinery out of pain and grit. There's power in being unseen. There's power in building in silence. There's power in knowing no one believes in you, because it forces you to believe harder. And then it happened. A shift. Not loud, not cinematic, just quiet, cold realization. You were no longer trying to survive the storm. You were becoming it. Your heart didn't beat for acceptance. It beat for conquest. Your hands didn't shake. They steadied. Your voice didn't tremble. It sharpened. The world didn't need to give you permission. You carved your own entrance with teeth grit and fists clenched. You became the creature pain designed, not the victim it intended. You turned agony into architecture. You turned sadness into steel. You turned nights of doubt into mornings of undeniable force. And yes, the world will call you heartless, cold, changed, different, unreachable, good. You weren't sculpted to be reachable. You were sculpted to be inevitable. You weren't carved for crowds. You were carved for coronation. You weren't shaped to be liked. You were shaped to be legendary. Monsters aren't born, they are carved. Carved by betrayal, carved by silence, carved by isolation, carved by nights where hope drowned and hunger resurrected in its place. You came from the shadows not because you were lost, but because darkness was where you trained. And one day, when your name shakes rooms, when your presence freezes hearts, when your results roar louder than any voice ever could, they will say, you changed. You became arrogant. You turned cold. But truth is simple. You didn't change. You revealed yourself. You didn't break. You evolved. You weren't abandoned. You outgrew them. Your silence was never weakness. It was incubation. They call it arrogance because they fear confidence they didn't build. They didn't understand your silence. They didn't understand your hunger. They didn't understand your patience. And when people don't understand something, they label it arrogant, cold, obsessed, dangerous, difficult. But names don't shape destiny. Discipline does. They call it arrogance because they fear confidence they didn't build. They mock what they cannot match. They judge what they cannot reach. They attack what reminds them of their own weakness. You rose not to impress, but to never kneel again. You didn't climb to be seen. You climbed to never be stepped on again. You didn't rise to be praised. You rose so no one could bury you twice. Every king was called mad before it was crowned. Every conqueror was called ruthless before history called him necessary. Every genius was called delusional before the world begged for his blueprint. They called you obsessive, yet obsession built empires. They called you heartless, yet heart never won a war alone. They called you delusional, yet delusion is simply vision without crowd approval. They lust at your focus, your grind, your isolation. Now they study it in silence, terrified to admit you were right. You didn't wait to be chosen. You chose yourself. You didn't hope for support. You became your own army. You didn't beg for allies. You became the battlefield. You forged loyalty with discipline, not handshakes. You built power with scars, not smiles. You created destiny with grit, not luck. The world feeds shat dreams and punishes wolves for hunger. You chose teeth over tears, claws over applause, fire over comfort, and fire forged the blade. Now the blade chooses silence. Power doesn't shout. Power doesn't explain. Power doesn't plea. Power waits, watches, calculates, and strikes. When the world is arrogant enough to think you faded, call it ego, call it madness, call it darkness, call it anything. But understand it saved you. They expect you to apologize for becoming what survival required. They expect humility from someone who learned life through humiliation. They expect softness from someone carved by storms. What a comedy. You don't rebuild from ashes to play polite. You don't rise from betrayal to seek permission. You don't survive hell to worship the opinions of the comfortable. You are reborn with iron lungs. You breathe ambition like oxygen. You inhale silence and exhale purpose. You don't hope. You hunt. You don't chase approval. You collect power. You don't ask for space. You take ground. You don't wish for mercy. You become consequence. You stopped being a dreamer. You became the architect. Blueprints made of blood and discipline. Foundations built from nights no one clapped for. Designs carved in suffering and sharpened in solitude. Do you know why they fear you now? Not because you changed, but because you arrived. Because you didn't fade. Because you didn't fold. Because you didn't give them the satisfaction of your disappearance. Weakness disgusted you. Begging repulsed you. Dependence insulted you. So you evolved. Not loudly, not publicly, but meticulously, like a machine learning to crush mountains with gears made from rage. And now look, they feel the shift. They sense the cold precision in your heartbeat. They see the discipline in your eyes. They smell the battlefield in your silence. They say you became too serious. Good. They say you're intimidating. Perfect. They say you forgot them. Finally. Growth demands casualties, and the first casualty was the version of you who needed kindness from cowards. Let them talk. Let them mock. Let them label. Let them gossip. Everything they speak is built on fear disguised as judgment. Remember, statues aren't built for quiet souls. Legends aren't carved from mercy. Empires aren't raised by delicate hearts. You didn't change. You sharpened. You didn't lose your humanity. You upgraded its armor. You didn't become evil. You became equal to the world's cruelty. And now, they don't see you. They sense you. They don't hear you. They feel the weight of every silent step you take. They don't fear your voice. They fear the truth ingrained in your spine. You are the consequence of their doubt. You are the evolution they prayed would never happen. You are the result of every room that laughed before they locked the door behind you. Call it ego. Call it madness. Call it darkness. Call it anything. But understand it saved you. And now, you don't chase glory. You construct inevitability. Not for applause, not for validation, but because destiny bows to the relentless. You didn't rise for revenge. You rose because staying down would have insulted your bloodline. This world respects the blade, not the dreamer holding flowers. So sharpen your silence, armor your hunger, fortify your will. You are no longer becoming. You already are. And this time, you don't walk into the world hoping to fit in. You walk in so the world remembers it is made of dust and you're made of fire. You didn't chase glory. You constructed inevitability. Forgiveness is for saints. Revenge is for survivors. Forgiveness is a luxury you were never offered. Peace was never your gift. Pain was, and pain is a cruel teacher, but it produces unstoppable students. People preach forgiveness because they've never drowned in betrayal. They speak of peace because they've never tasted humiliation on an empty stomach. They quote mercy only when they fear your memory. You don't owe the world closure. You don't owe the world grace. You owe the world repayment for disrespect. Let the soft-hearted pray for forgiveness. You learned to pray for power, and power answers its believers. They prayed you would stay buried. Now they pray you don't remember them. They hoped your silence meant defeat, not discipline. They expected you to break, not build. They never feared you when you were quiet. They fear you now because silence became strategy. Hunger became weapon. Patience became punishment. You don't want recognition. You want silence from those who mocked your hunger. You don't want applause. You want absence. You don't want we always knew. You want they never saw it coming. They laughed when you were learning. They disappeared when you were bleeding. They returned only when you started breathing fire. And now they whisper, you changed. You became different. You turned cold. You didn't turn cold. The world froze you. The warmth in you died the day loyalty felt foolish. The day trust felt suicidal. The day love demanded sacrifice, but returned scars. Caesar was not betrayed by enemies, but by friends. History doesn't hide betrayal. It crowns those who survive it. The knife in your back didn't kill you. It carved you. They expected you to heal quietly, to forgive loudly, to shrink politely, to return humbly. You chose violence. not with fists, but with evolution. You chose vengeance, not through rage, but through ruthlessness. You chose dominance, not to hurt them, but to remind them you never needed them. Revenge is not childish. Revenge is restoration. Revenge is remembering the grave they dug and choosing to build a kingdom on top of it. You owe no explanations. You owe no softness. You owe no apologies for survival. When they abandoned you, they didn't leave a victim. They left a threat in development. When they mocked you, they didn't shame you. They fed something ancient in your chest, something older than fear, older than grief, older than mercy, something that kings bled for, something empires burned for, something monsters rose for. You became the storm they hoped would pass. Instead, you became winter. Not loud, not dramatic, just permanent. You don't strike like lightning. You suffocate like ice. You don't rage like fire. You bleed patience like poison. You don't explode. You arrive. They will learn the cost of doubting a silent fighter. They will learn what happens when you bury someone alive and expect them not to claw out with knives for fingers. You are not here to forgive. You are here to correct history. You are here to balance disrespect with dominance. You are here to turn memory into consequence. Forgiveness brings peace. Revenge brings power. And power was always the language they respected. Not honesty, not kindness, not loyalty. You don't want peace. Peace doesn't feed warriors. You want reckoning. You want closure written in silence, not sympathy. You want the world that spat on your ambition to choke on your presence. Through suffering, you unlocked a law of survival. The world respects scars only when they come with teeth. So let them watch. Let them envy. Let them choke on the weight of what they doubted. Not because you need revenge, but because the throne you built deserves silence, not applause. They once said you were too intense, too serious, too ambitious. Now the same mouthies say, leave him alone. Funny how fear evolves opinions faster than truth. You don't rise to fit in. You rise to make space tremble. You don't rise for compliments. You rise for consequences. You don't rise to prove them wrong. Proving them wrong is too small. You rise to prove you were always right. They made you heartless. They made you merciless. They made you monstrous. And now they want mercy. No. Mercy is the right of kings, not the duty of survivors. Your existence is punishment enough. Your success is vengeance enough. Your silence is execution enough. You don't rise to be accepted. You rise to be feared. You're not here to fit in. You're here to rule what once rejected you. This world didn't give you a seat, so you carved one. Not with kindness, not with permission, with hunger sharp enough to cut stone. They told you to blend in, to stay humble, to wait your turn, to be grateful for crumbs. But lions don't beg for grass. Lions hunt, and the world learns to move when they walk. You are not here to be accepted. You are here to be undeniable, unshakable, unavoidable, unforgiving in your rise. It's no longer about proving them wrong. It's about making them irrelevant. Ghosts in a story they thought they owned. Footnotes under a legacy they once tried to erase. They don't deserve to witness your victory. They deserve to live in fear of it. Let them whisper your name like a warning. Let your success haunt the mouths that once spoke doubt. Let your presence feel like judgment, not reunion. They don't need to clap. They need to regret. And regret cuts deeper than any sword ever could. Let them fear what silence created, because your silence was not weakness. It was construction. It was blueprint. It was programming. You built a monster while they built excuses. You didn't rise by chance. You didn't get lucky. You weren't chosen. You forced destiny to take your name seriously. Kings aren't kind. Kings are necessary. A kingdom doesn't survive on softness. Power isn't earned through politeness. It's seized through precision and scars. Good men die forgotten. Silent men die ignored. Soft men die miserable. But warriors, they die legends. And monsters, they don't die until history runs out of breath. People love weakness. It makes them feel safe. But weakness dies. Hunger survives. Monsters inherit empires. You stopped asking, why me? You started saying, try me. And the universe listened. Your crown wasn't placed. It was forged in sleepless nights and quiet breakdowns. Every scar on your mind became a symbol of your royalty. Every doubt you swallowed became fuel. Every betrayal became bricks in your throne. You didn't wait for a spotlight. You became the fire. Some rise with applause. You rose with rage. Some rise with help. You rose alone, dragging broken bones and burning memories behind you. That's why they fear you, because anyone lifted can fall. But someone who built themselves cannot be replaced. You became your own weapon, your own army, your own prophecy. A storm shaped into flesh. A machine wired with vengeance. A king crafted from rejection. People say power corrupts, but pain corrupts deeper. And you learned to use corruption as fuel instead of curse. You tried kindness. They called you weak. You tried honesty. They called you naive. You tried loyalty. They abandoned you anyway. So now you tried dominance, and they suddenly call you dangerous. Good. Danger belongs to those who earned it through war within themselves. Destiny didn't choose you. Suffering did. Destiny only crowns those who already bled enough to deserve steel in their voice. Every time life punched you, it sharpened you. Every time you broke, you reassembled stronger. Your spirit didn't crack. It calcified. And now, you don't ask for loyalty. You demand results. You don't give second chances. You give consequences. You don't hope for respect. You command it. Heart on ice, mind on war, soul on mission. They thought you wanted validation, but all you ever wanted was dominion. They thought you wanted attention, but you wanted silence around your throne. Thrones aren't built with love. They're built with strategy. They aren't earned with smiles. They're earned with scars that didn't kill you. You don't pray for an easier life. You sharpen yourself for the harder path, because kings don't fear mountains. They become mountains. You are no longer the story they tried to bury. You are the rewrite they never saw coming. You didn't escape the pit. You learned to climb it. With claws they forced you to grow. Every version of you that broke became ammunition. Every version that cried became armor. Every version that doubted became a demon in your arsenal. And now you walk, not as a survivor, but as a force. The world doesn't need to like you. It needs to obey the reality of your existence. And if they can't respect your rise, they will respect the consequences of ignoring you. Because there are two kinds of people in your story now. Those who believe in your power, and those who pay the price for underestimating it. You don't need celebration. You need silence around your victories. You don't need validation. You need reaction. Faces pale, voices shake, spines tremble. You don't need them to bow. You need them to remember the day they realized you were never one of them. You are not here to join their world. You are here to replace it. And when the dust settles, when the noise fades, when every laugh that once cut you is replaced by silence, trembling in your presence, they will understand. Not because you told them, but because your existence makes excuses impossible. You didn't come to participate. You came to dominate, to outlive doubt, to outlast hate, to outgrow every cage they tried to weld around your destiny. You don't rise for crowds. You rise to build kingdoms from the bones of your doubt. This world doesn't reward the kind. It rewards the relentless. And you are relentless by necessity, not choice. Remember this, you don't compete with them. They compete with your shadows. Arrogance? No. You call it survival. Arrogance is loud. Survival is silent. Arrogance demands praise. Survival demands results. Arrogance asks to be seen. Survival forces the world to look. They called you arrogant because they mistook your armor for ego. They didn't realize the fire in your voice came from nights you almost broke. They didn't see the hunger behind your confidence. They didn't hear the screams buried beneath your silence. Every scar is a signature of battles they never saw. Every crack in your soul is proof that you didn't collapse. You expanded. Every dark night was a contract with destiny, not whispered, not begged, signed in pain, sealed in solitude. People pray for mercy. You trained for war. People hope for peace. You built claws. People chase comfort. You learn to breathe inside storms. Peace is a lie told by those too weak to conquer themselves. Peace is a myth sold to keep lions asleep. Peace is the cage kings are told to live in once they rise. But you weren't born for peace. You were built in chaos. You evolved in struggle. You sharpened in silence. You don't crave calm. You command it. Calm is not absence of storms. Calm is learning to control lightning with your bare hands. History never crowns the gentle. History crowns the ruthless, the relentless, the unbreakable. Let history call you ruthless. Legends are never gentle. Heroes are worshipped. Villains are remembered. And memory is far more powerful than worship. They expect you to return as the version they once knew. A quiet dreamer, a fragile believer, a hopeful soul. But hope alone is not fuel. It is a spark. You turned that spark into wildfire. Not to burn the world, but to burn a path through those who stood in your way. They wanted forgiveness. You delivered distance. They wanted softness. You became steel. They expected humility. You became thunder with a pulse. Let them cry arrogance as a shield for their own inadequacy. Let them call you intense, dramatic, unapproachable. The ocean does not apologize for drowning the unprepared. You didn't survive to be humble. You survived to be unforgettable. Humility is a virtue, but survival forged you into something holier than virtue, holier than goodness, holier than purity. You became purpose. You became inevitability. You became the creature life unleashed when it ran out of gentle lessons. Some inherited crowns. You earned yours through scars and silence. Some waited to be chosen. You crowned yourself with thunder and self-respect. You didn't climb to join the world. You climbed to rise above it. Your name will not be written in softness. It will be carved in stone, burned into minds, spoken with equal parts fear and fascination, because survival wears a crown. And arrogance, that was never arrogance. It was armor. It was survival clothing disguised as audacity. They don't see the nights you stitched yourself back together. They don't know the number of times you bled quietly so you could roar later. They don't understand the discipline in your rage, the intelligence in your fury. They see the crown. They don't see the battlefield in your veins. You earned every ounce of this power, not through luck, not through inheritance, through pain that demanded transformation, through betrayal that demanded evolution, through silence that demanded self-construction. You walked through hell, not to escape it, but to return carrying the fire like a throne on your shoulders. And now, every set of eyes that once mocked you now studies you. Every voice that once doubted now whispers cautiously. Every back that turned now wishes it hadn't. This is not revenge. This is balance. This is nature correcting itself. This is destiny honoring your scars. Your rise is justice. Your strength is proof. Your presence is a sentence served to those who gambled on your failure. You don't need their recognition. You own their silence. You don't need their approval. You own their regret. You don't need to return to who you were. You evolved into what they cannot become. You are not the storm. You are the season. You are not the threat. You are the law. You are not the comeback. You are the correction. They asked, "Who do you think you are?" And life answered for you. The one who did not die. The one who rose when logic said quit. The one who kept breathing when the world held its hand over your mouth. The one who chose fire over tears. The one who didn't just return. You ascended. So stand, not humble, not apologetic. Stand like the storm that learned to speak. Stand like the crown that learned to bleed. Stand like the nightmare they earned for doubting you. Because in the end, history does not honor the quiet survivors. It honors the ones who turned survival into sovereignty. They buried you laughing. They will bow to you trembling.